Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Max on Color. And how is everybody doing? Hope you are well. And today we have a very special episode because I hope you saw yesterday's presentations. And because today is just revolving around that, and we'll be talking about cool new stuff inside Magic Bullet Looks. Well, before we go into that, how are you doing, Chad? How are you doing, Dr. Sassi?
I'm doing well, Max. Thanks.
Thanks, fine. How are you?
I'm great. And it's been a while since we did our last sessions, right? So yeah. Now, without further ado, let me share my screen and talk to you a little bit about our great housekeeping. So yeah, we have plenty of events. As you can see, we'll be in NAB. We'll be at NAB. So if you want to meet in person, we'll be there, and come and join us and say hello, right? And there are also demystifying post productions coming up next Monday, and I think Chad will be doing that. Isn't that right, Chad?
That is correct, Max. Thank you for the shout out. Yeah.
That's really cool. And
live. That's Monday's live.
Live from NAB.
We're like live with an audience. Yeah, that's fun.
Wow. It's been a while, right? Doing it live.
Yeah.
And on this Friday, like usual, Seth and Hashi will be presenting some cool new stuff on their workflow on VFX and Chill. So make sure you'll be there and tune in to VFX and Chill. And again, we have free t-shirts if you haven't get one. And simply go to the link that we will paste in the chat right after this. And to go into the website, you will need a code for the free t-shirts, and the code for today is the one that you can see on your screen, right? So simply just redeem that code and you can get one free t-shirt from the Ask the Trainer collections. Alrighty. If you've been following us, and if you have watched yesterday's presentations on the new release, you probably saw that there are some new tools available in Magic Bullets Looks. And this update in Magic Bullet Suite 16 is all about Magic Bullet Looks. And in this update, Maxon introduced two new creative tools that you can use to emulate a real world effects. And for that, Dr. Sassi can talk to you more about that. And on top of that, there is also one technology preview that has been integrated in Magic Bullet Looks, but we'll keep it for later. And now let's go to Dr. Sassi and let's see what are the new tools introduced in Magic Bullet Looks. So Dr. Sassi, if you want to, I'll give you the screen.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So diffusion and halation is something that is pretty new in the new Magic Bullet Looks. Diffusion was before there, but why we talk about this in a color show, that's the question. Not just to make advertisement, of course, but when you use filters or introduce halation, you have to deal with it in color, and it is a communication inside of your picture, and I will go into that a little bit more in detail. So why we talk about this? Because the artist intent sits, from my point of view, between the color science and the color grading. And when we do not understand color science, then we have maybe nothing to work with, because most of our tools are based on that. And the tools itself gives us the option to use color grading so we can get the most bang out of our buck. And color science for me is, when we go with reproduction ideas, the eye and how the whole vision system works the light, which quality it has, the surfaces that we film, the camera that we use, the processing like DaVinci or so, the storage or the compression in this case, and of course the display or the projection. So we need to understand all of that. What happens when we do something, how we get it to our audience. And the audience is pretty much in the focus of the artist intent. So I simplify it here. Story, the medium, and the audience. That's pretty much all we do as artists. We have a story or an idea or a message or whatever you want to have. A medium like a canvas, the silver screen, or just a piece of paper, whatever it is, the medium is pretty much the closest to us. And then we have always our audience in our mind. Just producing for ourselves is maybe fun, but we want to reach out, we want to give something to the world, and we want to improve it, of course. And to do that in the best way, we use color correction and color grading, depend on where you are, which terms you use for that. So color grading is simplified also intensifying the communication with images, because the artist intent creates images, and to get the most out of that image, we have people specialized who know exactly how we work with the audience to get the mood, the impression, our message along the whole thing. So the how and the why. Most things are easy to explain how they work, but the why is often a lifelong exploration. Let me put a little example there. I have read over 30 books about cinematography. All books have in common that they say you can have a dolly, you can have a crane, a chip arm, or whatever, how to move the camera. That's the how. But you will find nearly no book that explains exactly the why. And the why is the art form of moving the camera. The how is a mechanical thing. Everyone can understand it in 1 hour. That's not a big problem. So when you hear anything, that's the how. The why is your personal intent. It's where your mood is, your ideas, your feeling. And that is something you can copy only when you want to learn it. But to be an artist in your own rights, you have to explore that on your own. And that is the beauty of it. It is something that is just yours. And to get there, we make those shows here, for example. Diffusion is one theme of that, and Tiffin writes, diffusion filters have been helping cinematographers create a look for generations. These filters can be used for reducing blemishes, wrinkles on talents, and reducing the resolution of the image. They can also be used for lifting contrast and creating halation or glowing effects to specular light sources in a scene. That's a mouthful, and just with a single filter in some cases. And when you just reflect on that, you see how powerful that is, and it will affect the whole image in most cases. So we need to talk about this, especially when a colorist might not know that you have used it. So what filters do we have? Tiffin has created the triangle of diffusion. There's in the left upper corner the halation, in the right upper corner contrast, and then resolution in the lower, and everything between. So when we created, or Regine created the new optical diffusion, the idea was, of course, what is used in the real world and how can we reproduce it? And I have to admit that I collect filters longer than I like to admit. And I have nearly 200 of them. And they are all very dear to me, each and every single one. Why so many? Because each filter quality has different strengths. Each strength is maybe nice to have by itself, but when you use different lenses, you need different strengths to get continuity. And I go into that a little bit later again. So each of them is able to produce some diffusion. Some have little elements in it to create some blurriness, some softness in it. But each of them changes the quality of the image, and that's where we are after. And this list here on the left side is complete and not complete. It changes because these filters are not always available. So you can't sometimes buy them when you need them. You have to buy them when they are available. That's the big challenge always. So hunting down the filter that you want to work with in the future is a thing that you have to do very soon. It's too late when you are already on set. So I hope this gives you an idea. It's on the Tiffen website and you can download it, print it out, put it in your filter case and be happy with it, of course, like I do. So what we have done, I got the idea that Stu is working on a new effect for optical diffusion. And of course, I couldn't tame myself. I told him that I have some filters. And he said, hey, great, can you film them, please? And I'll give you an idea how to do that. So we had the idea to have a straight little light element. And that light element should be always the same, very precisely measured, of course. So we could create then with a professional camera, here a Red Dragon, then an image based on the filtration that we have. Stu asked me to have here the color charts in it, gray card, and I put little sharpness card in it. And here on the right side, you see the difference in the strengths and if it was clear without, so we have always a comparison. I used always the same lens, so comparability was there. And here's another picture from another angle, and the stripe by itself was crucial to be very vertical, because then you can see in a vector scope how the light moves to the sides, and to reproduce it then in the software was much easier. So this is the whole collection of sets. And here you see, for example, pearlescent, black promist, digital diffusion, HDTV, which is a sandwich filter, so to say, soft effects, glimmer glass, ultra contrast, and so on. I could go on and on. But you see, it was a lot of work. And I was interested in something very specific. Since Max invited me here for today, I thought, how can I explain the connection to color? Because just to talk about filters would be a little bit too thin from my point of view. So I went out and took a reading, a spectral reading of the daylight. That is here on the left side. And I took a reading where I put the Blackmagic Black Promist, not Black Magic, Black Promist 5 on top of that spectrometer. And you can see maybe between these two pictures on the left and the right, not so much difference, but so I put them on top of each other, and the Black Promist has here that black line. And you can see the filter takes a lot of the bluish out of the picture and puts a lot of red into it. So why I'm talking about this, because in the moment you don't know really that a Black Promist was used as a colorist, you might think, oh, that picture is way too warm, I cool it down. And you take exactly the artist intention out of the picture, which would be horrible, of course. So just for clarity, these bars here are just an indicator how good the light was. It's LA light. And this is normally used to measure the quality of light sources. And when these bars are shorter, then the light is very bad. And you can see here we had pretty much optimal light situation. So diffusion. I said already, each focal length will have a specific result with a filter. Changing the focal length requires changing the filter if continuity is wanted. Software-based effects work on a single adjustment layer to rule the whole sequence. And that is already pretty much in a nutshell what I want to get to you, because when you are on set and you use a filter on the camera, that is baked in. And there's maybe not so much that you can do when the filtration was very strong to get it back out again. You have to live with it. And as a cinematographer, you want to have that, of course, baked in, because you don't want that anyone else messes with your pictures and go into a different direction after all. And your whole work that you put in is just taken out. This is not what you want. On the other hand, if you shoot just plain without filtration, you lose maybe some options to get a certain quality in the picture. And I go into that as well. But with the software, we have the option to keep our head straight on set and not think about, wait, I have now a 135mm lens, which strengths do I have to use, and so on. And we can do that in post. And we just put one adjustment layer on top of that with the Red Giant software and choose exactly what we want. And it's equal over the whole sequence, or even over the whole movie, if you like. So no headache, and you can change this later on. Though there's a huge advantage. And what I wanted to show, always show, not tell. This is an image that I saw a few weeks ago. And when you take a look into the left center and into the right center, it's on the right a little bit brighter, or is it the same? It's the same. But that little bit diffusion here gives you the impression that exactly there is more light. And this is one of the key effects that, for example, in Tech Noir is described when now the name is gone. You have a certain dynamic range in your camera and you want to have something brighter. So normally you have to do the whole thing down to get a highlight really stand out. But that would compress a lot and makes the whole picture darker. The saturation would be different and so on. So to have a little diffusion in some areas means you get a different effect and the whole picture looks like brighter. In times before HDR, that was very important to do. So before I go further, I have to go now here out and go into After Effects because I want to talk first about diffusion. And here we have a picture where we have strong contrasts in it. And I want to go right into Magic Bullet Looks. This is normally easy to find in Effects and Presets and After Effects when you type in Looks, and you know that maybe already. And then this interface opens. And you can see maybe here already that I have set up here ACES, and this is what Max will explain to you in detail. What I want to do is to press the T key for the tools, and then I get here to the optical diffusion. And instead of screwing a filter in front of a lens, I do just this, and I'm already done. Not so much, but I have to press here, maybe on the presets, and then you can see already the huge work that Stu has put into it. All my little filters are here inside, and I have something prepared here over the top just to make a point, and then you get something like this. And speaking of color correction, when you would get a picture like this, you would think, oh, that was shot in log and I have to adjust it. Maybe I have a LUT that will fix it or so. And the whole artist intent is gone. And then it looks maybe in this way when you correct it back to it, but it will not work that way. I will show you that in a moment when I just take here an S-curve. That would be maybe the first thing that you want to do. And drag it down here to get maybe the blacks back and get a little bit the milkiness out, but it will not work very well. And so what I want to do here is to go through a few of these filters. And I have updated it yesterday, and the whole series here is now sorted. In my beta version it was not, so I'm a little bit confused. This was ultra contrast, and I'm looking for ProMist 5, for example. And then we can take a look to all these parameters here. The density is, of course, very important. I think it's self-explanatory when I type the number here, and it's maybe easier. Then the effect is gone, and you can dial it in the way you want. Very easy. So I think the software here is a little bit slow based on the transmission via web. So the size is pretty simple as well. It takes one point and then how far that effect reaches out. So the strength at the point of origin is the same, but the size goes out. And the fell-off is then how it moves to the outside of the size. So when you take this completely out here, you see the fell-off is pretty much all over the place without changing the density or the size. So I go maybe back to something that I can do. So, and glow, also very simple to use. It's just when it goes overboard. And that sometimes happens when you have, for example, an ProMist or an ultra contrast and you shoot without a matte box, then light that is not in the viewing angle of the lens can hit the filter. And since there are tiny little particles in it, this light will affect the picture. For example, when you shoot in a forest, into the wide open landscape, but you are standing under trees, that green filtration from the leaves will hit the filter, and you get a green tint in the picture, and you don't know what hits you. And glow is pretty much what you can do there in that way, maybe to a certain degree. It's of course up to you. So highlights only. That means when you don't want to have too much in areas where you don't have highlights, then you can dial this in. And Stu has done also a very good example where the face had nearly no highlights, not like this one here. But you can adjust this a little bit. How to do this in the best way would be to enable the preview highlights here to on. And in the moment you dial, it switches to a black and white picture, and you get a wonderful preview here to see exactly which areas have no light in it, and this will give you maybe a better feedback. So filter, that's something that is very, very small in change, but you have to play with it. Streak gives more like rays, and diffuse is more soft from my point of view. But I mean, it's always depending on the picture that you have. And then you have color. If there's a tint, for example, if you want to dial this more into a black pro mist, for example, because you had all these settings here in the way you want to have it, then maybe a little bit of the brownish gives you that black from the black pro mist instead of the pro mist inside of that. And then we come already to the halation. And I go here back into my presenter mode. So while light moves through a film strip, it becomes scattered and bounced. Since layers are responsible for different colors, the result of the bouncing becomes colorful. Based on an anti-halation layer on the back, light bouncing from metal parts of the camera is excluded. So what does it mean? Normally in the old days, 100 years ago or so, the inside of the camera was completely silvery, metalish, and light that came in bounced around. After a while, Kodak put an anti-halation layer behind the film strip, so all the light that would bounce inside the camera was already excluded. But inside of the film layer, and I have made a very bad preview here, I will show you that. I did it last night. It was too late to get it better. But here you can see already these little balls here are photons in RG and B color. And then I have here the red layer, which is of course a negative, the opposite, it's cyan. Then the green layer, which would be in the negative, the reddish magenta one. And then the bluish one, shortly before that little anti-halation filter, anti-halation strip. Sorry about this. So, and that package, which can contain maybe for each color even 3 different ones, fine, medium, and coarse, bounces these little photons a little bit further. For all the 3D people, that would be a subsurf scattering, for example. And this creates then a more soft result in the blue area and a very strong and sharp area here in the red area, or in the red results finally when we have the positive from the negative. And I put them here on top of each other. And that was already 11 o'clock last night when it finished. So you can see the red one here in the middle is pretty strong. And then the bluish one is larger and fades out more. I go out here again, and I want to show you that here on the picture. For that, I switch off the optical diffusion. I go here again to Tools. I have to scroll down a little bit, Halation, and there you have it already. And maybe you can see really well what it does, because I have to go again to my ridiculous over-the-top results here. And you can see maybe now here this little red stripe. That's pretty much what all that is about. And we can go here now through the parameters. The amount is of course clear. The higher the numbers, the more you will have. Size is similar to the diffusion. Anamorphic would be then that the aspect ratio changes from 1:1 to 2:1 or 2.4 to 1. Depend on how you see it, or sometimes anamorphic is different. 1 to 1.3, but here I think it's 1 to 1, 2. So the fell-off is the same. How strong it reaches out in the space. And I don't know why this is not working here with my, yeah, now it works. Okay, so you can see I can change this very nicely. The highlights only is in the same way supported by this preview highlight here. So I see it in a black and white representation of the luminance. And then I can say here, I want to have it. And then I get here a nice little red line and here. And there's also something bluish in. And please have a look here when I switch on and off. It might be a little bit cooler all of a sudden here. So why is it important to put these artifacts that normally people try to avoid back in? From my point of view and the exploration of film is that there are certain indicators, aesthetical indicators in celluloid, in the movie itself, like halation, diffusion, and maybe glare from the lens, lens flare, and all of that. All of that normally was tried to keep to a minimum, but we maybe have a conditioning based on 10, 20 years of going into the movies that we think in the moment we see some kind of these indicators, we see something that is filmic or cinematic. And the more balanced we do it, the more we can express with it. We can give that feeling that maybe is ingrained in many people's memory, and we can reactivate this. In that moment, we can build up on this. And this is maybe where I started with the how. This is how I've shown it here with even the parameters a little bit screwed up. But the why we use it in each and every case, that is the important part. And last but not least, I have here both now in it. And the optical diffusion is normally in front of the lens. And the halation is, of course, inside of the medium, the celluloid or the polyester, if you like so. So the feeding ground of the halation is, of course, the light that comes in. In the moment that becomes diffused, then the feeding ground is not that sharp anymore. So you have to have an eye on that this is not overpowering maybe the optical diffusion, because that would be an effect that is maybe a little bit unnatural, and all your efforts to tap into the conditioning of your audience will not work anymore. So this is pretty much all. I hope I screwed it not too much up. I give back to Max, and if there are some questions, then please let me know.
Well, that's really great, Dr. Sasi, because in my opinion, those two tools are really helpful in creating like something that you can't necessarily like obviously see, but it's more intrinsic, something that you can feel. Like for example, most of the time when you want to do like a film emulations, like of borrowing a lot of film aesthetics for your grade. I'm speaking from the colorist point of view here. Like for example, if a look is calling for borrowing from a lot of film aesthetics, and things that I can like think of is probably, okay, I will use print film emulations at the end, and then what more on top of that. I think we covered that in the very first sessions of the show, is that one of the big thing is like the halations thing, and this was back then was a flaw that people really want to like get rid of. But now we're trying to bring everything back, and in order to give the same expressions and same feel of your grade. And then also speaking of like the diffusion thing, it's like really amazing that nowadays you can just like emulate real world diffusions just simply by drag and dropping a presets. And I would never think, it's like, if you work in a like Resolve, for example, how would you do that? In of course, probably there are ways to do that, but it's probably not as easy as using presets, right?
I think in the late 90s, the Mayas created some books about all of that. And side tip was you just take a copy of your layer, blur it, then use screen, and put the opacity to maybe 5% or so. And then you get already something very similar. but it's of course always doubling the whole material when you have a feature film with 120,000 frames.
Exactly.
That's a lot of work.
Exactly. And it's same like the halations. Like if I may share my screen here, the way we normally do halations, like in colorist discipline back then, is, you know, we know that current versions of Resolve also include like the halations plugins, like right with the in the OFX panel. But back then, before this filter even available, the way to create halations back then, it's a little bit how do you call it? Demanding. So it demands some thoughts. You really need to put some thought into it. So back then, I mean, without the plugin, you can also create halations, but it's not as easy as using presets. Like, so for example, back then when I want to emulate halations, is that I take whatever footage I have, and then I will throw them into linear light. And in the linear light, because it's like the same space where the light behaves in the real world. And there, I will just select, using curves, I will just select the highlight of the clip.
Yeah.
So I will just select the very bright highlights of the clip, and then from that, I will blur the selected highlight, and I will blur on the red channel and the blue channel, and also slightly a little bit less in the green channel. And after that, I will return from the linear light and back into whatever color space my clip was. So in this case, I was from Rec 709 going into linear, doing this operation, selecting just the very bright area, and then blur the red channel, blur the blue channels, and then the green channel. So the sum of that effects is that I think it's very subtle. If I turn on and off, or maybe let me make it more visible, is that, oh sorry, my note were inactive, so no wonder it doesn't look anything like correct. So this is without the halations, and if you see that there's like a halations happening, and it takes a lot of effort to do that. And now you can even just use the effects that come with the Resolve in the OFX, but then with Magic Bullet having the halations available in Magic Bullet Looks, people that work solely in nonlinear editor, for example, when you're working in Premiere Pro, for example, or in Avid Media Composer, now you have the chance. Now you have the chance to emulate halations like correctly. Isn't that like wonderful? Right?
And you can use it for groups, right?
Exactly. So you can just like drop it once in adjustment layer, and you can affect the whole clips that you put under the adjustment layer. So that's just like the input that I want to like really want to talk about the halations. Like back then, it was like some effort that you need to do to create that. But now it's really easy. Just use Magic Bullet Looks, drop some halations presets on that, and bam, you got it. And what's nice is that in Magic Bullet Looks halations, I think, let me drop a Magic Bullet Looks here. What's nice is that in Magic Bullet Looks halation, there is like this options to either make it anamorphic or not. So it will just like, because it happens in the capture side. So if you're using anamorphic lens, it will also look certain in a certain way compared to, you know, a normal spherical lens. And that's everything is in the very easy and user-friendly UI.
And you have the ACES now included, and I found
Exactly.
Depending on which color science I select, the effect will show up differently.
Yes.
And I should have mentioned that when you have a filter in front of a lens, that's absolute. You can't just dial in something. But when you have a picture that has different brightness values, different resolutions, different whatever, you have to dial in maybe a little bit. So the long list of presets is relative. An ultra contrast will be not exactly as if you take just
I think
here.
did I share my screen by the way?
And yeah.
Previously, when I'm showing the anamorphic options, did I share my screen? I don't think so, right?
I didn't see it.
It's a new beginner mistake. I'm sorry, guys. Operator error. So yeah,
makes everyone feel good to see that other people screw up as well. So well done, Max.
Live.
You are a human.
Operator error. I'm sorry, guys. So what I want to show you previously is that here in Magic Bullet Halation tool. So for example, let's make it obvious. Let's make it like really obvious. Right. Probably you can see it, right? So without and with. And in Magic Bullet Halation tool, there's like this control called anamorphic. So when you are shooting with anamorphic lens and you want to emulate that, and there's a simply checkbox to do that. And probably this is not the best clip to showcase that. But if you see in this preview, the halations, when I'm switching on the anamorphic controls, it's getting wider, like, you know, stretchy, like.
Yeah.
How would you?
I stumbled in my presentation if it is in 1:2 or 1:2.4. Do you have any other information? I would think it's 1:2 because it's squeezed. But
yeah, that's I'm not quite sure, but we can always refer back to the manual, right? So
I haven't found it, but I think 1:2 is the squeeze format, and the aspect ratio of the picture is 2.4. So in the moment you present, you have scrambling of numbers in your head.
Yeah, ACES is a color management framework. It's all about accuracy. It's not about aesthetics. ACES is not a look, and it is the way how do you call it? It's a color management framework to accurately transform what your camera saw on the day you shot into what your display can reproduce. And everything was done systematically without any guesswork. And we are using image science instead of like our eyes to balance our images. So the idea of ACES is that, you know, it provides you with a systematic approach to preserve the perceptual accuracy of our images as it moves between one or more imaging system, right? So imagine this, when you're going outside and you take some pictures with your camera, and then after that you view the same pictures or video in another display, for example. By doing just that, your images has already gone through the minimum of 2 different imaging systems that interpret lights and color that are different than our eyes do. So those are the display and the capture technology. And imagine if you adding up another footage from another camera and another pictures from a 3D render. And those images were generated with different color science. And every single camera manufacturer has their own rights, has their own patent on how an image should looks like, right? So you're probably familiar with the term of, like, you know, the nice Canon skin tone, or, you know, the Sony characteristic or whatever. So the idea of ACES is that it can provide a uniform platform where you can get a exact and accurate image without, you know, without having to, you know, jump back and forth between all those different color science. Because now with ACES, you can just map in one consistent place. So, and you can do that by using image science instead of guesswork, right? So if you're not using ACES, imagine if you have like a timeline, like what you're seeing in your screen. Let me switch back to my Resolve. So if you have a timeline like this, I have red raw clip, and then I have another RE raw clip, and then I have log clip from RE, and some log clip from Sony, and some Rec 709 clips. Without ACES, how would you like make everything balanced? You have to do that probably manually, right? Without color management framework, what you normally do is like probably you will tweak lift, gamma, and gain, and then after that, or maybe you can even just use LUT. But then, how accurate are they? Because you're benchmarking that with your eyes on a specific reference monitor. Now, by using ACES, the idea is that you can get like by using ACES, you can use ACES to transform all these images into one normalized, good-looking images that can be seen like that can be seen by different people in the pipeline. So, for example, VFX artists, when working with VFX artists, the colorist and VFX artists will be seeing exactly the same image, and those transformations are not baked in. So your image is still in scene referred space. Meanwhile, you are viewing it in the display referred space. So probably I already how do you call it? Make somebody confused in the audience. Some of you who's not really understand what a scene referred or what a display referred. To understand it simply is that scene referred simply means the image data is maintained in a format that as closely as possible to represent the original scenes. And in this image, there are no restrictions on color or dynamic range. So take, for example, raw images. They are scene referred images because, you know, they are representing the original light value on the scenes. But then the display referred scene means that the image that has been manipulated and transformed into the color space that your display is using. So, for example, if you're watching an image in a Rec 709 monitor and it looks good, your best bet is that that images has been transformed into Rec 709 color space, and that means in doing that, probably there are some dynamic range and color that has been sacrificed to get like a good looking images in the Rec 709. If you do that like by hand without the color management framework. So where am I? ACES, yes. So
can you show how it is in
yes,
Red Giant?
I want to show this specific diagram first, because we will go into Red Giant and see how we can set that in Magic Bullet Looks, but I want to get everybody in the same page first, right? So when using ACES, there are three things that you need to consider. Is that how to get into ACES, what happened in the ACES in the background when you are in ACES, and then how to get out from ACES, because at some point you need to deliver your project, right? So when you are going into ACES, what you need to understand is that this term called IDT. You will need an IDT to go into ACES. And IDT stands for Input Device Transform. What it does is that it tags your images so that it can be recognized by ACES framework. What type of images, where does it coming from? And you do that with your log clips and all your display referred clips. But then if you have raw images, you don't have to specify the input device transform, because the ACES framework will automatically recognize that, and your raw images will look just fine right away, and the ACES will use it So what happened after using the IDT or after setting ACES in your project is that the RGB primaries of your images will be mapped into huge color space called the ACES ST2065-1 or AP0. And this color space is way much bigger than all the visible lights that human can see. And doing so, it means that, you know, there are no clipping, and it's just a dream to make to work there, because you have all the available. The color space is way much bigger than what we can see. But the only thing that you need to consider is that since the primaries of ACES AP0 fall considerably outside of the diagram of the spectral locus, all the color that you can see, so it's not very intuitive to use your tools into the AP0 color space. And that is the thing that the Academy acknowledged. And to resolve that, they came up with a subsidiary color space called the ACES AP1. And this AP1 color space is considered consists of 3 different color spaces. The ACCG for computer graphics, and it's linearly encoded, and ACCC and ACCCT, which are logarithmically encoded. So, and this subsidiary color space, I like to understand it as, you know, as a virtual color space that only used by the software to be able to handle the ACES AP0 huge color space. So after that, when you are working in ACES, at some point you need to deliver it out from ACES, right? And you can deliver as ACES AP0, and for like archival or for future work in another facility, or you can also deliver that as something that you can preview in your display nicely. And in order to do that, the ACES will use what it called the RRT, or it stands for Reference Rendering Transform. So the RRT, what RRT is doing, it converts the ACES 2065-1 scene referred images into HDR display referred data. And then this HDR, high dynamic range display referred data, can then be used by the ODT to map out into various display standards. So it means that
ODT stands for
output display transform. So by using the ODT, you can transform your footage into multiple display standards, be it SDR or HDR. So it means like you just need to grade once, and with some simple trims, you can deliver your grade into multiple deliverables, right? So that's the big power, that's the huge, powerful concept of ACES. You got to work in scene referred, but then you got to view your image nicely and crisp in display referred. So let's go back to Resolve. And I would like, before showing how to set ACES in Magic Bullet Looks, I would like to show you how easy it is to set ACES in Resolve. And to do that, you can simply just go into the project settings, and here you simply go to the color management, and in the color science, there's a drop down, and here you have the options to either use ACES-CC or ACES-CCT. So the difference between ACES-CC and ACES-CCT, both are AP1 color space. The ACES-CCT has a little toe. T stand for toe, CC stand for color corrections, and CCT, color corrections with toe. It means like it provides a little bit toe in the lower half of the curves, lower third of the curves. So it means that if you want to like tweak the detail in the dark area of your image, probably CCT is like the better way to go. But if you prefer to have like a really clean and crispy black of your images, probably CC is the way to go. So I'll use ACES CCT, and here you can select between different versions of ACES. Always use the latest one. The latest and greatest is ACES 1.3, and here I can either select to use the reference gamut compressions that comes with ACES 1.3, but we'll talk about that in the future sessions probably. And then I'll use the color space grading tools options. Now, in order to enter ACES framework, I need to use like input transform for my like display referred images, right? My raw images will be automatically mapped into ACES AP0 like a charm, no problem there. But if I have multiple clips like what I have here, I have like raw clip, I have log clip, and I have like Rec 709 clip. Your best bet is probably to just leave the input transform in the project settings to just no input transform, and we'll do that later on in the color page or in the media page. And after that, now there is like this option, ACES output transform. Now you can set these options to the reference monitor that you are using. So what type of color space that your reference monitor is capable of like accurately reproduce. So if you have like something for that, if you have a reference monitor that can accurately reproduce P3 D65, you can also do that. But in my case, I have like the Rec 709. So I'll just use Rec 709. And lo and behold, once I click save, you'll see the change in the log clip, in the raw clip, right? So something like that, and something like this. So let's do it again, probably. And if we go to ACES, you'll see that my image go from here into this wonderfully. And now you just save a lot of time normalizing your image. But then I still have this flattened log clips and some Rec 709 that now looks not so nice. How do I handle that? So the idea is that you need to use the input device transform, and to do that you can just easily right click on that specific clips and select ACES input transform. And since this is a clip coming from RE Alexa, I will just select RE Alexa. And this one happens to be Sony clip. And I go to ACES input transform into Sony as log 3. And voila, it now looking really great. And for all the Rec 709 image, I can select ACES input transform, invert display, Rec 709, and bam. Now, by doing so, I successfully go into ACES and can work in ACES. Now, some questions probably, so how do I export ACES? So if you want to export ACES, and if you want to export to Rec 709, you can just simply select Rec 709. But then if you want to export ACES as in the huge AP0 color space, it's really easy. All you need to do is that no output transform, save it, and then in the deliver page, format, use OpenEXR. And that's the standard of like the recommendations from the Academy. So let's go back into Rec 709. And we'll go into Magic Bullet Looks right away. Sorry, Rec 709. There you go. Ooh. Now, let's jump into Premiere Pro and let's demonstrate Magic Bullet Looks here. So I have this clip, and oh, by the way, hot tip here, if you want to see all the tools inside Magic Bullet Looks, you can type in bullet, and now you have all the tools ranging from Colorista into Magic Bullet Looks. So I have 3 clips coming from RG Alexa and 2 clips from Rec 709. So for example, if I want to handle like these 3 clips in one go, I can just create adjustment layer, put it on top of that, adjust the adjustment layer, and probably use magic bullet looks on the adjustment layer. So now with magic bullet looks ACES support. So before doing that, let me walk you through into the interface here. So I want to draw your attentions into this tool chain here. So, the standard way of doing things in Magic Bullet Looks has been the 1D color handling. So some of you probably already like asking what is 1D color handling, and it's to make it really simple is that 1D color handling applies a 1D LUT which affects the contrast of your image. So it affects the tone curve of your image, but then the color primaries remain in the original source color. So for example, here I have a clip coming from RG Alexa. If I want to use color handling, I can just specify that this one coming from RG Alexa, and I want to output it as Rec 709 while previewing it in sRGB, or having it previewed in Rec 709, but just by simply just deactivate that. Now the thing is,
hey Max,
yes,
can I interrupt you with a question?
Oh yeah, sure, man.
Okay, I don't think I ever understood the 1D LUT thing before, but so is this just like, is 1D just kind of like a gamut? It's your a gamma adjustment?
Exactly.
You're just
yeah, it's like applying a curve right in front of it. So it handles the contrast. The contrast looks good, but then another characteristic that you can see is that it lacks saturations. So a lot of things that you can add. Most of the time that you need to do is that adding saturations to make it looks good, right? And since all the tools in the tool chains is processed in the linear floating points, nothing will be clipped, and that's the 1D color handling.
Oh, so if there was a 3D LUT, because I've heard of like a 1D LUT and 3D LUT.
1D LUT yes, 1D LUT is always handling the tonality of your images, while the 3D LUT is handling all the 3 color channels, the R, G, and B, right? And
okay, so a 3D LUT could add like a warm tint or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
It can handle both. Like with 3D LUT, you can effectively transform your clips from one color space into other. And if you use any LUT, which is like mentioned, so this is a technical LUT, or transformations LUT, or the LUT that you can download from camera manufacturers, your best bet that most likely those are 3D LUTs.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. So that's the 1D color handling. So the idea of the 1D color handling, it tried to simplify your workflow, so that sometimes when you are converting from one color space to the others, it can generate artifact. And that's the idea of using color handling, so that you don't have to worry about artifact that can be generated when you are transforming from one space to the others. So this can look, I mean, this can provide a good tonality, but then if you want like the technically correct transformations, it can still let you down. But that's not the case anymore, because in this versions of Magic Bullet Looks, we have Open Color IO ACES. So now with ACES, everything can be like transformed, like what I showed you previously in DaVinci Resolve. It can be done exactly in the same manner. So for example, here I have a clip coming from RG Alexa. I can go into my input and select input, RG Alexa, and here I have like different exposure index, but because like the most likely that the most used are normally the one in the native ISO range, and and therefore I use like the exposure index 800. You can try whatever like you like, or you can ask the cameraman, in this case, what exposure index is he using. But my best bet, it would be probably in the 800. And now, but just by doing that, I am correctly mapping my color space and my tonality of my image into my output Rec 709. But then, what's nice here, I can output it into a lot of different things. And I will show you that later on in Resolve. But then, but if we are in Premiere Pro, I probably want to output it into output Rec 709. And I can also preview it in any options available here. And then now, by just doing this, if I confirm this, I'm using ACES to transform my images from RE wide gamut into Rec 709. And I can, by using like Magic Bullet looks and the tool chains inside it, I can do my adjustment inside ACES framework. So that's really powerful. So for example, if I'm just doing like normal film print emulations, all these parameters, all the things that we're doing inside here between this input and output will be carried out in ACES framework. And the things is like sometimes the challenge with this is that since like we know that Premiere Pro is not supporting natively supporting ACES, but using Magic Bullet looks, you can somehow work in ACES. Now, sometimes like you got the things like this. I apply looks into a adjustment layer, but then I have like the exposure difference. How would I handle that? So I could go into like this different clips and apply, like for example, colorista, and tackle my exposure, something like that in the clip level. Sorry, it's supposed to be this. You see? Nope. Operator error again, I'm sorry. So I can tackle this, but then what I'm doing here, I'm doing the exposure in the RE wide gamut, exposure adjustment in the RE wide gamut, and not in ACES. So how if I want to do exposure adjustment in ACES? You can either just simply go into Magic Bullet looks and apply the exposure adjustment anywhere between this input and output, or you can also do it here with this exposure adjustment. But the thing is, like by doing so in the adjustment layer, all three clips will have like same exposure adjustment. For example, here it doesn't look very nice. So probably the recommended workflow for that is that, you know, use Magic Bullet looks in the clip level. And so you can use Magic Bullet looks in the clip level. And like for example here, let's do this 2 different clips. So if I'm launching looks, oh, by the way, if you happen to find that you are using most of the time you are using like a lot of like same input and output, you can save them as a preset. So for example here, I have ACE input RE log C 800, and then I output it at Rec 709. I can save it as a preset, save it, and I can name it RE to 709 and click save, and it will be available in the presets. So for example here, I know that this clip is a little bit too dark, and I'll just add the exposure like half a stops there. And here in the first clip, I can use Magic Bullet looks to just simply use it as a conversion tool that convert my clips using ACES from RE wide gamut into Rec 709. Of course, you can still balance that. probably something like this. Now,
hey Max,
yes.
Try to insert a tip really quick.
Yeah.
Or maybe not a tip, just like this is what I would do. I really like the flexibility of working on adjustment layer because it's like a separate thing. And also it's a very obvious way to know that, like from a distance, that I've color graded something.
Yeah.
So another option is to, let's say you set up all that stuff on an adjustment layer where you've got the input and output set up right. So it's got ACES on the adjustment layer. You could just like alt drag, like hold the alt or option key and drag the adjustment layer so that each clip would have its own adjustment layer.
Yeah.
And then you could go in manually if like one needs a different exposure or whatever, but it's already set up for ACES on each one. You could see which clips at a glance have that adjustment, or if you've missed clips without. Anyway, that's probably what I would do.
That's a hot tip right there. Thank you very much, Chad. Or you can do that. Or you can do that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Chad.
You're welcome.
Or if you choose to do the dumb way, like I do here.
Oh gosh, no, it's a different workflow.
It's different workflow. If you like, and I can still use the adjustment layer here to specifically create just the looks, right? So I use Magic Bullet looks in my clip level to normalize my clips, and here this will be already in ACES. No, this will be in Rec 709, right? Because the previous Magic Bullet looks in the clip level already outputting it into Rec 709. So this will be in Rec 709, and I want to preview it in Rec 709, or not doing that. And I can create any like grade, for example this, and have it confirm. So all those adjustments are done inside ACES. Although it's already been in the Rec 709, it is remapped into ACES and then back into Rec 709 again. So actually, I want to showcase that in a more advanced workflow, like in Resolve, for example. So, for example, if we have something like this, and what we can do is that by using Magic Bullet looks in the timeline, for example, you can also do grouping, like what we already like mentioned in the first and the second episode chat, where I break down like my approach to emulate like film looks. You see that there are plenty way of groupings and plenty way of using Magic Bullet looks. You can use it in the pre-group, or you can use it in the post-group to affect like specific clips. But for example, if I just want to create a grade, like let's agree that, to how do you call it, to save time, let's agree that everything has been normalized, has been, matched. And of course, you need to match like different exposures here and different white balance of this clip if this like the same like clips in a story in a one timeline. You probably want to do that in your clips level and to match them between one clip to the other. Like for example, let's do this tree. Like let's focus on this three clips here. Like for example, this one is a little bit too dark. I probably can like tackle the exposures a little bit here. And this one is fine. And this one is fine. Just like quick and dirty like that. And now, if I want to create like a grade that like a look that affect these three clips, for example, if I want to probably play around with print film emulations, and I want to do that inside looks and inside ACES, I can now do that using Magic Bullet looks, and I will just drag and drop Magic Bullet looks in my timeline, and just by doing that, it affects all the clips in the timeline. Let's just focus for now into these three clips. And let me launch Magic Bullet looks. Now, previously, what has been like the case when working in Resolve with 1D color handling is that it is very hard to get like a matching preview of your clip inside Resolve and the preview in Magic Bullet Looks. And for example, let's do that. And this is Alexa Loxy, same as input, and it's like it's hard. And now, just by using ACES, I can get like a preview, like the correct preview, like what I see in my Resolve viewer. And that is really wonderful, because now I can just focus on the grade, and I know that this is exactly how it looks in my Resolve viewer. So for example, let me just drag and drop, print film, and maybe add some telecinnet to make it a little bit moody. And I want to use like the optical diffusions, and maybe just affect the highlights. Oh, big bloom, to make it like a little subtle. And I can confirm that. Bam, what happening? What is happening, guys? Uh-oh, let me check. Ah, that is wrong, because what's wrong is that I'm outputting it into Rec 709. No wonder it clips, because I am still in ACES in DaVinci Resolve. So when you are using, when you want to use Magic Bullet Looks in ACES in DaVinci Resolve, what you can do is that you can output it back, same like an input. You can go to ACES and select ACESicity, or the easier way is to just select same as input. Now, I'm inputting my, I'm saying into ACES, I'm telling ACES my clips is coming from ACESicity, and it has to go out into ACESicity, but I want to preview it in Rec 709. And if I confirm this, it should be looking like that. So that is Magic Bullet Looks in Magic Bullet Looks workflow in ACES. So here I can still tweak the, I can still do my balancing in the clip level. Is there any questions? Because
there's not any questions in the chat.
Awesome.
But
so yeah, that's the new additions of the tools and the technology preview inside Magic Bullet Looks. Please bear in mind that the implementations of ACES in Magic Bullet Looks at this moment is still can be categorized as a technology preview level. So the idea of Maxon releasing this ACES support in Magic Bullet Looks in its early phase is that we want to guide our user, our audience, into the journey, and then collecting important feedbacks along the way as we go. So we want to give you the taste of ACES, since this is like the future-proof workflow, and we want you to use ACES more often. So try it, and anytime you have issues, or anytime you have like questions, feel free to reach out to us. Or if you have any workflow questions about your color grading and how to implement Magic Bullet Looks in multiple different workflow, feel free to reach out to maxoncolor@maxon.net. We'll be very happy to assist you there. And yeah, it's been great.
Hey,
yes,
yeah,
Chad.
I just want to say thanks. I feel like I'm like the resident student here. I'm just kind of like
that's
like my job, like the full-time just hanger outer. Learning stuff around, well, especially around you two guys talking about color. I mean, it's just been amazing. I learned about the 1D LUT thing. That was new to me. I learned from Dr. Sassy, like I didn't realize that focal length played a factor in filters.
Oh yeah, that one I don't know either. That focal length can affect filters. That's why I've been shooting with Black Magic. See, Dr. Sassy, what you're. That's why I only have one diffusion filter, and that is the Black Promise 1/4.
And like, I mean, like I can't imagine the expense, like, because it's a bayonet fit, right? You screw it on your lens. Is
exactly.
that like, and so like getting a
It's
bayonet for all of your different lenses?
Exactly,
Yeah.
the screw in.
I mean, I have a few of those, but I mean, it's just such a hassle. And then it's like, yeah, it's like baked into your footage. I never use them because like you have like this, it's like a permanent thing. So, you know, and another thing I want to say, which is really exciting, is that, you know, I've been using Red Giant stuff for years, and, you know, they've always had a bunch of presets that you can use. And I don't know, I maybe I'm just like being pessimistic or cynical, but I just kind of picture that they'll fiddle with it and then be like, oh, this is good enough. We'll call this a preset or whatever. But, you know, to know the work that you went through, to see those behind the scenes photos of all of those filters, and and to know that like in you know, optical diffusion, that like we're actually, when we select like a pro mist preset, like this is like intelligently, intentionally done, where they've studied exactly the characteristics of this exact filter, and then have the flexibility of post-production to be able to dial in the exact attributes of that filter. And my footage is like, I mean, that just makes it so much more exciting to play with, because it's so much more authentic, and also has all the flexibility of post. I mean, I think that these are really great tools, and they're very exciting for me because, yeah, even if halation and diffusion are issues or problems, I mean, a lot of times when we're recreating cinematic looks like 24 frames per second or whatever, we are trying to get back to the damage of film. We're trying to get back to the organic, earthy attributes of film, and these tools really help. And so the tools are amazing, but then also seeing like all of the effort, Dr. Sassi, that you put into making the presets and the features and functions so flexible. It's just it adds so much more to the excitement for me of like what these tools bring to the table. So thank you both so much for helping me understand this stuff. And I feel like I've learned so much in the last little bit since we started this. It's amazing.
Thank you. Let me add to that. I'm also a fanatic lens collector. And normally you have 3 lenses, needs to be sharp, contrasty, good color production, and so on. And then you buy all these lenses who do exactly the opposite, who create something that is organic, that is more soft, more flare, more whatever. And so you end up maybe with 50 or more lenses, and each is very, very important to me. They are not comparable to each other. They are just unique. And typically I go out in the park 3 days with the new lens and explore it. And when you find a sweet spot, what one lens does, for example, the Lens Baby Velvet is very soft and gloomy. Sometimes to put a quarter per lesson in front of it just strengthen what the core quality is of the lens. So it's not just to create some very visually strong effects. It's also to give that characteristic of the lens a little bump to make it even more punchy in what it does so well already. So it's not just that we create a look or something like that. There's a language, an expression with the work we do as cinematographers. And the help with Red Giant products, especially with the new lens flare product, that is breathtaking. I miss already words for it. It's so
probably
huge.
At some point we need to cover the lens flare in these sessions as well, right?
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
We haven't showed that yet, but
yeah,
at some
and
point.
all of that is so exciting. And you're pointing out the presets. Let me put one more on top of that. And thanks for putting the energy back into all of that. Presets for me are lazy bastards. So you dial them in and you're done. But my main take on that is it is a brainstorming tool. And all the wonderful presets that are in the hundreds in Red Giant products are for me always brainstorming. I do not want to have just click and put an effect on it and be done with it. That would be boring. The why why I do something. And the why gives you also the direction where you go with it. So you adjust the preset. But first to go all to these wonderful presets that, nah, that's not mine. Oh yeah, that's cool. Oh wait, this is better. And then you tweak again, like I do with filters and lenses. You get a little bit more and you get your signature look on the end. And that's the important part. You are recognizable. You condition your audience to a certain look, and they say, yes, this is what I love. And
it's an auditioning tool, right? The presets,
Yeah.
auditioning tool. It's like, okay, how does it look like? Okay, nope, next.
Well, like you talked about artist intent and the importance of artist intent, and the presets just kind of like, they're just great starting points to get you so you're more in the zone of getting to your intent faster. So that's great. And I think that the options, like the size and all those options, are like the perfect balance of, you know, enough complexity to customize the look, but without being like too overwhelming that you have to get into like all these like details. Like there's simple and clean. So you know, using those presets as a jumping off point, you could really quickly dial in exactly, you know, what the intent is for the shot.
Yeah.
So.
And we are over time, but let me add only 2 minutes. The main idea over a decade ago for ACES was there are hundreds of different cameras in this world, and every day comes a new one to it. The typical idea for an indie production would be we have a very expensive camera and we have maybe a GoPro that we hold out of the car where we say, okay, when we crash it, it was worth the shot. But the quality is different. So the ACES main idea was we have one reference camera, the golden standard, so to say. And then we create IDTs, as Max has explained it, that brings each camera pretty close to that reference or matches it even. And then ACES is a huge space where nothing is clipped, nothing is lost. That's the big, huge space. And so we put a GoPro in it for a few $100 and maybe a Red camera or an ARRI Alexa, even ARRI Alexa. And so we get them all in a very similar quality.
Yeah,
they will have differences in dynamic range and all of that. I'm aware of that, but we can match and mix it, and we can work with it, and it doesn't show up so quickly that we have here a GoPro and here we have an ARRI Alexa, which is maybe 20, 30 times more expensive at least, or maybe 100 times, depend on which lens you screw onto it. But this is the beauty where we are now. And to have ACES now in it with just a drop down and we are in, instead of having all that overhead that we have when we go professionally in it, like Max showed it in detail in DaVinci Resolve. We can just click and we are there. We don't have that headache anymore.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
With ACES, matching camera is a dream, right? Because, you know, all those camera source, like all the clips from different camera source is mapped into like this common big huge AP0 color space, and from there, since we are in the same space, it's easier to match from one camera to the other. So that is huge.
It's camera diversity is heaven.
Yeah.
And it also, I mean, it because it is its own little bubble, you know, it kind of overrides when you have a host application like Premiere that has color technology that's still, you know, pretty outdated. It allows you to go in and kind of like override what Premiere is doing and still use ACES, even though Premiere doesn't support ACES.
Exactly.
So that's a really powerful thing to be aware of as well.
That makes me like really excited. Now, if you are in Premiere Pro, you can work in ACES with Magic Bullet looks. How awesome is that?
Yeah, pretty incredible.
So,
and all the host applications, Magic Bullet's everywhere. So.
Exactly. So just imagine we covered like a lot of like a host applications, like you said, chat, and now we can work in ACES. And if you find like a cool workflows that you want to share with us guys in the audience, please reach out to us in maxoncolor@maxon.net. And yeah, in this closing note, I would like to say thank you very much, Dr. Sasi, and thank you so much, Chad, for joining us today. And this has been really fun sessions. And don't forget that you can also rewind and rewatch these sessions in YouTube. It will be available in our training channel called the Maxon Training channel in YouTube. So yeah, if you want to rewatch the sessions, if you brave enough to want to rewatch it, then do it. It will be available on YouTube. So on that note, I really would like to thank you for your time and attentions for us today. And it's been our real pleasure. I hope you stay safe, and we'll see each other again in 2 weeks' time from now. So thank you very much. And this is Max, Dr. Sasi, and Chad. And bye for now.
Thanks, Max.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Max.